I've asked Ms. Gilhousen if she'd like to give the invocation.
If you would stand and pray with me.
Father, thank you for this time that you've given us to gather together and deliberate and make decisions that will benefit the students and families and employees of this district, Lord. I especially want to ask that your sovereign hand of protection be over Drew Wood, who's one of our precious students in our district, Lord. I pray that right now as he's in surgery, Father, that you would guide the doctor's hands, Lord, that you would give them the wisdom that they need to discover what's going on in his body, and Lord, that you, the ultimate healer, the giver of life, would restore him to full health. I pray, Father, for the families of the soldiers who lost their lives in Chattanooga. Father, that you would give them comfort and peace as only you can, Lord, and that they would know you in a deeper way through this experience, Lord. And just ask that you would be with us this evening and bless this time we have together. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
And if you would pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, I'd like to call to order the special board meeting of July 21st, 2015. I'd like to welcome everybody. Looks like we have all the same folks here. Again, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank you for attending this special meeting. It's our opportunity as your elected representatives to collaborate openly and make decisions that will decide the future direction of our public schools and the education of our children here in Clay County. If you wish to address the board, there will be an opportunity at the end of the special meeting to speak for 3 minutes. Please fill out a card, which you'll find located in the back of the room, and you can bring that up and give that to Ms. Cornegie. And as always, your participation is welcome and appreciated. So with that, we will get started. Item number 1 on the agenda is to review. I'm looking at the wrong one. I'm looking at July 28th. I apologize. Review the 2014-15 final estimated budget, and I believe that is Ms. Legutko.
I'll go ahead and start. Do you hear me? Yeah. Okay. I don't like this right in my face.
Maybe if you could pull it down, there you go, and then swing it around underneath. There you go.
Okay.
That's good. Perfect.
Madam Chair, Mr. Superintendent, board members, this meeting tonight is primarily part of the TRIM guidelines. It's the timeline to identify our millage rates and to request approval to advertise the millage rates. So with that, I will start the presentation. Okay, you have the binder in front of you. The binder represents all of the information that I will present tonight or this evening. Please understand that this information is going to change. It is not the final budget. The final budget will be presented at the September 10th meeting. This information is primarily to advertise our tentative budget and, of course, the millage rates. Again, here is the timeline of our budget planning. It talks about when we started our projections for the current fiscal year, which is 15-16. And of course, it includes the trim guidelines or the trim calendar. So our final public hearing will be Thursday, September 10th at 6 p.m. Okay. Determining the millage rate. This is what is used to generate the various millage rates we are allowed to levy to receive revenue to support our classrooms. As a result of that, we are required to complete a process. At the very beginning of, I believe it's July 1st, the tax assessor's office will assess our property values in Clay County. That information is then fed to the Department of Revenue, of which they are the ones that determine what our true property values could potentially be or will be for the 15-16 fiscal year. When that is done, then the district is required to complete an additional step to determine what sort of revenue we will need in order to provide support to our classrooms, to fund our students for education. As a result of that, once we've completed that information, the school district then waits or relies on the Department of Education to certify that tax roll, as well as determine what the required local effort is needed to generate the amount of revenue to support our educating of our students. So with that being said, I wanted to share with you a copy of what that form looks like, and to share with you the actual calculations on how the millage rate is determined. So basically, this is your DR 420. The top portion represents the tax assessor. They are the property appraiser who identifies our millage, our property, our taxable value for our property in, of course, Clay County. So basically what they're saying is that our property value is worth about $9.9 billion. There are other calculations that go into this formula that, again, I'm not the property appraiser goes into all of those numbers, and again, it's populated into the form here that generates the information for the district.
Do we have a copy of this in our book?
I believe towards the back you've got a lot of additional information. I'm not sure if this form is in there towards the back, but I can provide you with a copy of it, because again, this is online. But I'll provide you a copy if it's not in there.
Thank you.
Okay. Pretty much what this does, it calculates what the rollback rate is, and it also tells us exactly how much dollars we generated in the current year and how much revenue we will generate in the following year. What you're looking at right now is the prior year, which we generated $69,054,588. And you can see on line 13 it says prior year total state law and local board proceeds. So that is how much money we were expected to generate.
69 million.
69 million. Of course, we are to budget 96% of those revenues. We did not collect the 96% of the number. Okay? So again, those are the millage rates for prior year. And
Can I ask a question before you go further?
Yeah.
I know Thursday you said that we collected 94% of the 96%.
Correct.
What's that difference? Is it like how many million?
It's
is
about,
that?
it's really about $500,000 to about $700,000.
So we still collected about $68 million then, 68,200,000 or something.
Well, 96% of the, we collected about,
Oh, right, that's not.
It's only
that's
not-
the
yeah.
100%,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
So how much did we collect out of that number then, do you think?
the amount we collected for local property tax was about 65, I believe.
Thank you.
Sounds about right.
Okay.
But I can have the concrete numbers when,
It's okay.
you know,
Thank you.
going from memory.
That's pretty good.
So now what they're saying in this form is once we've populated the information, we were waiting, as I told you at the last meeting, I was waiting for the state to certify our RLE, our required local effort. That is line number 16. No, I'm sorry, line number... No, it's line 16. I apologize. So basically what it's saying that once the state provided me with my required local effort, it does the automatic calculation. And it's saying that we are going to generate approximately $71,032,851. That includes the 1.5 mil, and it also includes the 0.748.
What's the .748?
That's the discretionary dollars that we are allowed to administer or require. It's part of the state's calculation. We are allowed to administer the required local effort. There's the 0.748 as discretionary millage, and then we have, of course, the facilities, the LCIF dollars that we can levy. I mean, the 1.5 for capital improvements and maintenance and those types of activities. Now, what it shows there, it also tells you the current year proposed state law rate as percent change of the state law rollback rate, and it tells you what the calculation is, and it's about 0.46. And basically what it's saying on line 22, current year total proposed rate as a percent change of the rollback rate is about 1%. Well, I'm not going to explain in detail what that means. I'm just going to read the Florida statute, or the statutes, and that way, you know, we'll... Okay, hold on. Okay. The rollback rate, the millage rate for the new year, which would produce the same level of ad valorem tax revenue as was levied in the prior year. After adjusting the new year's taxable property value by backing out net new construction and certain deletions. In other words, the rollback rate is the new millage rate that it would take to produce the same amount of property tax revenue using the new year property tax roll, as was produced the year before by the prior year's actual millage rate and prior year tax roll. In theory, the theory behind the rollback rate is to maintain a constant revenue stream from local property tax sources. Presumably, as the tax roll increases in value, the millage rate would drop proportionately. Unfortunately, this theory does not provide for funding students' enrollment growth, nor does it allow for basic inflationary cost increases. A third limitation is the historical trend towards rapidly declining state revenues expressed as a percentage of the school board's operating and capital outlay budgets. Okay.
So if you go back to that other slide, the 1% that you showed us, does that mean that it's a 1% tax increase?
Correct. But let's go to the next slide. In terms of what that really means, if you were to have, say, a home that's $150,000, take away the homestead exemption of $50,000, your value would be assessed at $100,000. If you were to use last year's rate, which is 7.22 mils, you would generate about $722 for tax purposes. For 15-16, if that same home has the same value of $100,000, with the rate that we are presenting tonight, 7.137, we would generate $713.70. It's a savings of $8.50. So in essence, if your home has the same value, you would have seen a reduction in your tax bill. However, our properties have increased throughout, over time, the market's coming back. Therefore, the property has increased. As a result of that, you still will experience an increase in your property tax.
By about 1%.
Exactly. Got it. Very good. I apologize for the tininess of the letters and the numbers. You have this in your book, and basically it's a history of where our required local effort has been, our basic levy, and all of the different taxes levies we've done in the last several years. For 15-16, we're levying required local effort of 4.889. We're levying the 0.748. And then, of course, the total is about 5.637. And our capital is 1.5 mils. Total levy would be 7.137. We are, for statewide, the levy required local effort is 4.984. Clay County is below the state average. What that means is, if you'll notice, if you remember, and I know this is, a lot of numbers, but last week when I provided you with the FEFP calculation, there is a line item that talks about the discretionary, where the state brings us up to that average number. That's why we receive that discretionary dollars, because we do not levy the state average.
Okay.
Therefore, the state gives us additional funding to carry us through the school year.
Okay.
Okay.
What did you say the state average was? 4.99?
4.984.
4.984. Got it. Thank you.
Okay. And these numbers can be confirmed on the second calculation that's available on the DOE website. I think it's page 45 to 49. That entire.
I got it.
So, okay, this is a schedule, a pictorial view of our value assessed over the last 10 years.
Ms. Legault,
14, 15.
I don't understand. I thought 15, 16, it had gone up slightly from
No,
14, 15.
No, it went down.
I thought the assessed value, I saw in the paper that the property appraiser said that our assessed values were going up. No?
Right.
It seems contradictory to, I'm missing something.
Right. No, let me double check on that DR 420.
I mean, that seems to be, it seems like it ought to have gone up just a little bit. I saw in the paper that the property values had gone up. So.
I thought so too, because it's 2 years in a row.
No, I was just curious because I thought I must be reading this wrong.
The assessed value did go up, and it's possible that the screen, the PowerPoint, the charts didn't bring it up like it should.
So 15, 16 should be just a little bit more than 14, 15, I think, by the numbers that I had been looking at. So okay, so we need to, because I thought that's something doesn't look right there.
Last year, the assessed value was, hold on, I believe it was, I said 69 million.
Yeah. And
No, it was, I don't have it in front of me.
let's see, I had it, just a minute. Well, taxable value in 14-15, it said 9,561,000, and then 15-16, it says 9,952,000, so that's an increase.
Correct. The prior year's final gross taxable value was $9.5 billion.
Right.
And the current year adjusted taxable value is $9.7 billion. So you are correct. That chart should show a little higher than what is showing right now.
Okay, thank you. I thought, I must be reading this wrong.
No, I think it's the way the chart was created.
Picked up, okay, thank you.
Okay. So we've talked about the millage rates and what they will be projected for next year. In your book, you do have a copy of the proposed budget for next year. As you can see, the budget that will appear on the advertisement will have the required local effort of 4.8890 as basic discretionary operating, 0.748 as basic discretionary, 4.8890 as required local effort, 1.50 as basic discretionary capital outlay, administering a total millage of 7.1370. As required by TRIM and the advertisement, we are required to advertise a balanced budget given the information that we were provided on the second calculation. These budget numbers have been updated to reflect those numbers. Basically, what we have is a total budget of $348,436,656. It represents all funds, which is general fund, which is primarily our operating budget, our special revenue funds, which includes food service and other special revenue such as Title I, Title II, Title III, Title X, and any other federal programs that are administered, or entitlement grants that are administered through the state. Our debt service, which pays for our COPS issues, our racetrack, our SBE bonds, and our capital projects, which are the maintenance, the LCIF, those types of activities. Okay. Okay, so now we'll go into the budget, the details of the budget. The general fund, total local revenue 57,088,862. State revenue 197,043,800. The state revenue represents the FEFP, our categorical funds, our state licenses, any additional miscellaneous revenues that we do collect. Our local revenue, going back up, our local revenue includes indirect costs, educational fees, rent, all of those other pieces that go into our entire part of our budget to support educating our kids. The second part of it is the federal revenues, which represents the impact funds, ROTC, and Medicaid. Our total federal revenue, it represents $1.9 million, $1,930,694. Total revenue that we are expected to receive is $256,063,356. Our other financing sources, which represents our transfers in, total revenue of $261,944,813. The next slide represents our fund balance and where we are and where we're expected to be at the end of next fiscal year. Currently, with the revenues that we have received and the budget that we've allocated, total revenues is $255,846,630. Total funds available is $262,910, $341. Our appropriations or budgeted appropriations are $259,205,194. So we are expected to end our fund balance at $9,586,604. Of that, our unassigned is 2.10. That's for 15-16. Our 14-15 school year, we received $252,946,974. We expended $252,953,614. Our ending fund balance was $7,063,711, and our unassigned fund balance is 2.12%, which represents $5,199,902.
I'm missing something here. We expended more than we took in. How do we end up with $5.199 million? Am I reading that right?
Yes. We used part of our reserve from the prior year.
Okay, that explains it. Thank you.
Okay, the next part of the slide represents the transfers in. Basically, we transfer approximately a part of the LCIF to fund LCIF local capital improvement funds. That represents $300,000 goes towards the equipment in our schools. The 5.776128 represents the property casualty insurance, our capital projects, maintenance, project manager salary, all of those items that I shared with you, and it's actually part of the ad that I will share with you later. $5,329 is used for self-insurance for vandalism. It's a separate policy that we maintain, and of course $100,000 represents the sale of equipment that we receive throughout the school year when we sell the computers or furniture, those types of things.
So just so I understand, so this money right here is money we transfer into the general fund from...
Well, it's called other financing sources. It's other sources that help with the general fund. For this fund, it helps with the fund.
Okay.
This is not part of our calculation in fund balance per Department of Education. These are just revenues that come in to assist with the operations of general fund.
Okay.
Ms. Lukutko.
Yes.
So you're saying on the page before that you're saying the estimated end of the year for 2014-15 that we ended up with 2.12. Is that correct?
2.12%.
Okay. And then what we have proposed right now, we're going to be going backwards to 2.10.
Yes. These numbers, again, are all tentative. This, again, the 2.12 could change because we're still closing our books. The idea, of course, is to maintain our try to be at the 2.58, but as of right now, we are at 2.12%. And projected for next year is the 2.10%. Of course, we're taking measures to ensure that we meet the 3%. So again, like I said, these numbers are still tentative, and in September.
And we'll have the final numbers in September?
Correct. This slide is just basically a summary of that one page where I spoke about the 2.10 and how we're going to get there. Again, our estimated revenues is about $255,846,629. The resources from other financing sources makes ended our budget with about $261,728,086. At that point, given all of those numbers, using last year's fund balance, we'll end up with about $268,791,799. Our appropriations, all of our appropriations, which includes encumbrances, categoricals, projects, everything that's under general fund, will end up spending about $263,637,344. So our projected unassigned fund balance will be about $5.1 million, leaving us with a 2.10% fund balance.
If I could ask a question. So in the discussion that we had previously at the last board meeting where you said that you were going to budget $2.5 million, that's what we would need to get to 3%, correct? Is that what we're going to be doing this year? Is that what we're trying to do, or?
We have plans to ensure that we'll get towards the 3%. The 2.5 that I shared with you at the last meeting, the understanding is that we'll go back to our expenses, our appropriations, and try to review what's in that budget.
Okay, so that's the goal for this coming year. The way that this states right here, if things stay the same the way they are right now, we're going to be at 2.1, but we're going to try to get to 3%, correct?
Correct. We have a plan in place, so we'll, to ensure that we get to the 3%.
Okay.
So let me ask a question. If we wanted to just get to the 2.58 by the end of this year, since that's what we directed for last year, we didn't make it, and it looks like we're going to go backwards. Of the 2.5 million, would it be just 2 million that would be needed to get to 2.58?
Yes, approximately that. I'm trying to remember those numbers that I provided, what 1% would represent. I thought it was about 2.5 maybe. So
okay.
So 2.5 would be the difference. About 7.5, 7.6, around those numbers is where 3% would lie.
675, 398. You have it at the bottom of that chart is where we need to be at 3%.
Correct.
And you show here, back on the page that said number 9. I'm on page number 9.
Okay.
And you show the 2013, 14, 15, the fund balance along the bottom. We were at 2.24, then at 2.12 at the end of last year, and if everything is the way is projected, we'll be at the 2.10. Right. And you show an ending fund balance for the other 2 years of $7,300,000, 7.063, and then if nothing was changed, we'd have an ending fund balance of $9.5 million.
Correct.
So that's where you're getting the 2.5 out of that fund balance?
Well, part of that fund balance represents the unreserved. So the full amount is everything, the total fund balance. So the unassigned fund balance is the dollar of the 5.1 below that. Right. The 5154454 represents the unassigned fund balance, leaving a 2.10%. Right. Which is where we have to be.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
This is basically a pictorial view of the revenue sources that we will be receiving. As you can see, the state, we are generating, for local, we will generate about 22% of the local revenues, our taxes, RLE, to receive $187,407,000 from the state resources. So again, this is just a pictorial view. This is 14-15 school year. The next slide represents 15-16, and it really hasn't changed that much. It's basically the same. Okay. This is a pictorial view again of our unweighted students from 06 through 15-16. Again, like I mentioned, current year BSA is about $6 million. The local funding per student is $6,982. We're not at the level at 2007. So we're really, even though the revenue, the funding is going up for our students, we're still not at level funding as compared to 007, 008. Okay, this slide represents an analysis of expenditures by object codes. What that means, it represents our salaries and benefits, our other expenses, our contracted services, energy, and materials and supplies. Of course, 84% represents our salaries and benefits. 300, which is purchase services, represents contracts, travel, Kelly Sub, all the contracts that support the district. Some of those contracts are the dual enrollment, the virtual schools, the Nephilim contracts, Performance Matters, charter schools. The payment that we make to our charters is under the purchase services for the new charter, for the current charter, and of course for AMI, PACE. All of those are contracts that we actually pay for, and that number is but budget is represented in purchase services.
Okay.
Okay.
And so to go back to the point that was highlighted last week about the difference between purchase services for 14-15 and 15-16, probably the big differences are the charter schools in there.
Right. Part of it is the charter school. Part of it is the current contracts. I will admit I have not really compared last year's to this year, so I'll have to do an analysis to identify those increases of our contracts for next year. And yes, the AMI, the Kelly, all the charters. Any contracted services that we have, including ESE, including maintenance, IT, and of course this is where our attorney fees are. And I believe we have approximately about $100,000 budgeted for the attorney fees. So I wanted to clarify her question about the attorney fees.
If I could just add, there's 3 or 4 big numbers that really make the difference, if you like numbers.
Yes.
3.1 million in terminal leave pay this year. We had never paid out more than $1 million in Clay County history. That's significant. At this time last year, we had 0 charter schools, and we did not have any that looked like they would open for several reasons. Well, one opened anyway, 1.2 million. Next year, projecting for the second one, that's 2.6 million. So if you add 1.2 million for the first one and 2.6 for the next one, that's $3.8 million, just bam.
Yeah.
So the world changes every day, and not being able to roll forward about 3.3 million if you take the terminal leave going over by $2 million and the 1.2 for OPAA that was not budgeted last year. That's over $3 million that this time last year we thought would have been helping us to get to 2.58 and rolling us up to 3. So no excuses, just the facts, ma'am. That's where we're at.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
This is the expenses for prior year, 14-15. And it represents the same items, the salaries and benefits, which is about 87% last year. Our purchase services, about $14 million. Energy, of course, is 9.2, which is our electricity, our disposal, those types of activities. Capital outlay, of course, is equipment, those types of things. And other expenses are our temporary labor, our dues and fees, and those types of activities.
May I ask a question? Why have materials and supplies gone up from 8.2 to 9.4? Because we haven't increased in number of students. What kind of materials and supplies have we increased that?
It could be the non-textbook type materials that we've purchased, because we don't identify well, actually, correction. The materials and supplies represent the 500. What that falls under is our supplies for regular office supplies, those types of activities. It also represents the textbooks, our 520, the purchase of our textbooks, and those instructional material type of expenses that the schools incur or the district incurs on behalf of the district. So you've got a lot of other pieces. Not, you know, your 500 represents a lot more than just supplies.
Okay.
I mean, I'm just looking at trying to compare, you know, 15-16 to 2014-15. May I ask Mr. Merrill, like, what would make capital outlay go up? I mean, we're not building school. I mean, why would? I'm just trying to see. It's just everything. It seems like around the board is creeping up.
Well, obviously the cost of maintenance has gone up. The supplies, air conditioning units, you know, chillers, plumbing supplies. The cost of those things has gone up. I don't recall what the previous year was. I haven't got that in front of me.
1.76.
Oh, 1.76%.
No, 1.764, 0.70%, and now it's up to 1.15% at 2.992. So I just wondered what, you know, I'm trying to think, what have we done that?
I know in the past couple of years in the past year we've replaced chillers in a couple schools, and that's expensive. I'd have to take a look in specifically and see if I can find out what you're reference. Right off the top of my head, I don't have that.
I'm thinking it's probably mostly the increased cost of maintenance, because you're right, we haven't built no new schools, but...
What about what we did at Middleburg? Would that come under there, things like that, you know, on the Middleburg project? And
probably not. If you're talking strictly 510, that would have been a separate project.
So that's not in there. I was just trying to, I mean, it just seemed like from 1.7 to 2.9, I thought.
Let me do some research and see if I can get back with you.
I'm just curious. It just seems like everything keeps going up a little.
Yeah. You know, at Thursday's meeting, Mr. Merrill just made me think of it. You were going to get back to us as to why something had gone from 1.5 million to 16 million or something.
Right.
What was that?
What was it?
I'm just looking through my papers.
That was the I believe it's either the debt, the 7-Eleven fund.
Yeah.
What's 7-Eleven?
That's the self-insurance fund that I will speak to at the end.
Okay, let's try to get through the information first.
Okay. Again, this is a pictorial view by function on the final estimated for 14-15, and then the proposed for next year. And this is by function, 55,000. So as you can see, 66%, 0.32 is going into the classroom.
Okay, I have another question. On page 11, final estimated under Board of Education, I assume that's us. Why would it be going up so much? About the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7th line down.
Is it page 11?
No, 7th. Excuse me. What page am I? I can't. Oh, it says 17. I
17.
thought it said 11. I'm sorry.
Okay.
So the 7,100 fund is what she's talking about.
Yeah, the 7,100 fund represents all of the board, I believe the superintendent, I believe the attorneys. All of those items are listed under the 71, the Board of Education.
I just wondered why it was proposed more. for 15-16.
I can do the research and
Okay.
get back
I mean,
to
I'm
you
just
on the
curious
details.
did you get a raise I didn't know about?
And that includes all the travel, all of the dues and fees, all of the things that we pay on
Yeah.
behalf of the board and the superintendent.
I just,
So,
w-
and
you know, but
including
it's just
salaries,
everything keeps going
everything.
up. That's what I was
Yeah,
wondering.
I know. And
if
I
we're
can, like
trying
I
to
said,
cut
I
back.
will be happy to do the research to give you the detailed breakdown of, you know, what's represented in that number.
Okay.
Ms. Legato, it was also Fund 300 purchase services went up by, was proposed to go up by $4 million. That was the one we wanted to know about.
That's the one she just explained.
That's the charter school money.
It is charter schools?
It's right here,
Part
yeah.
of
It's the one she just explained.
Yeah.
Can I ask her? Because I didn't get that out of what she said.
Right. In the other the other chart that represented by object code, the 300, this is represented by function, the type of activity that, or the function of the office. So it's built into all of this, the 300 account, but on the object code chart, which is on page, hold on, let me get to the page.
18.
On the page 15,
Go back to 15 and 16.
Okay.
the items that represent purchase services, which is 300, everything under 300. So we've got Kelly substitutes, the contract for Kelly subs, which is 313. We've got 390s, which is other purchase services, and you've got 310, which is your contracts. That represents contracts such as Performance Matters, Nephlin, which is our virtual school. We do have contracts that provide support to our virtual school. Travel for the entire district, dual enrollment, resource officers, our charter schools, all three of them, AMI, PACE, Kelly subs, our attorney, contracts for all types of the curriculum, instruction, ESC contracts, maintenance contracts, IT contracts, drug testing, HR, all of HR's contracts, and of course our attorney, part of our attorney fees. What else? I'm trying to think of all the things that could possibly fall under.
Okay, but the $4 million increase, I think, is really
Pretty
the
much
one.
that is the 2 million for 2.5, I believe the 2 point, whatever I said last week, for the contract for the charter school. And part of it is also, part of it is AMI as well. Part of it is the Nephlin contract. But again, like I stated, I have not had an opportunity to compare last year's contracts to this year's contract to see if there's an impact of increases for our contracted services that, you know, we've renewed our contracts.
And I think the other
So I'll have to do that analysis.
So I'm confused, and I'm not trying to be difficult.
No, I know.
But if you haven't had a chance to analyze that we have increased these, then how do we know that we have a $4 million increase in it?
Well, again, like I said, this is a tentative budget. The September budget will represent exactly how much money, how much our budget will be for those line items. So at this point, this is all an estimate at this point. It is based on the information that was provided by the departments. And based on that information, that's what's generating this document.
Okay.
Between now and September, our goal is to work towards getting the 3% fund balance. And as a result of that, there's a plan in place that we will look at all of the expenses, look at all of our contracts to see exactly who they are, what they are there increases that, you know, I'll have to do an analysis of all of the contracts. And it's possible that those contracts are truly, there might have been an increase from last year to this year. I just have not done that analysis. But pretty much this is what the contracts are expected to be as of right now.
And
So,
when those
yeah.
contracts are renewed, is there is there an evaluation of the impact to the budget? Because I guess my concern is, are we having contracts approved or renewed? Say you mentioned Performance Matters, so it's just on the top of my head. Is a contract like that renewed without it coming back to the board as a significant increase in cost?
No. We approve all this.
I would say probably it is, isn't it? And because it's not going before our Assistant Superintendent of Business Affairs to say whether or not we can still afford that. So we're approving stuff, assuming that we can afford it, but it's not come before you to see if we can afford it.
Can I add a little clarity?
Yeah.
One, we are doing a much more collaborative budget and contract approach than the one that we've had in years past. So everybody will be intersecting, whether it's instructional, HR, with the Assistant Superintendent for Business Affairs with these contracts. Two, the big jump, the 2 or 3 big numbers that got you from 14.7 million to 18.95 are the 2 charter schools. That's 3.8. The 2.6 is the number Ms. Legutko is estimating based on the enrollment that we can project through Ms. Sellis' office right now for charter schools USA. So that's 2.6. You add 1.2 for OPAA if they remain about stable. That's 3.8. We're estimating about 20-something kids in AMI, whatever that number was Francis brought the other night was just shy of $100,000. That's 3.9. So that's really what you're seeing. We didn't grow or reduce significantly in student numbers. We're pretty flat right now. So again, this is a tentative budget with projections and estimates involved, but I don't have any reason to believe that Performance Matters or some of those other contracts are going to go down or up significantly. So does that help?
Yeah, I wasn't specifically picking on Performance Matters.
No, I know, and I couldn't name all those contracts off the top of my head.
One, she had said she would come back to us, so I didn't appreciate being brushed off that. And two, that the public deserves to know, where those things came from, and if we, because, and she said it's tentative, and we'll scrub through and see if these things are real. But I think to brush off any questions that board members have is not fair, and that's why we're here, and that's why you have a hearing to ask those questions.
Well, I didn't think that she brushed anybody off, and I certainly didn't brush you off.
I felt like you did.
All I said was she just explained that when she went through those numbers, and we just said that it was contracts, travel, Kelly services. She just basically said the same thing over, and she was referencing the difference between last year and this year. And if you remember, at the last workshop meeting last week, she had revealed to us that these things were not budgeted last year, and that's why the big difference. And so we asked her to bring that back to us, and that's exactly what she just did. So I didn't mean to brush you off, but all I was saying is that she just explained that. So it's been explained twice now. So
May I say something? As Mr. Van Zant said, one problem we had is that the Performing Arts Academy was not even budgeted last year at all. So we had to eat that and make up for that. Right now, she keeps saying tentative, proposed, tentative. Until those warm bodies get into those classrooms, we think we know about how many are going to be there, but we're not going to know anything definite until school starts. And on another note, to get back, I just have to keep asking these things. I'm not trying to be picky, but look back on page 17, if you would, and tell me why debt service doesn't have anything there for 15-16. We do pay off debt service every year.
Correct, but debt service is one of the other funds that we manage. This is just the general fund. Debt service is under a 200 fund.
But it was listed the last
This year.
13, 14, 14, 15. I just wondered why there wasn't something there.
Because I believe that is the CO and DS numbers that the state provides to us. It's a book entry that it's sort of like a journal entry that's done at the end of the year.
Okay.
We have not received those numbers from Department of Education.
Okay. So the debt service will show up on what we're proposing to pay somewhere.
It's a CO and DS fee,
Okay.
basically, and that's applied at the end of the year. It's estimated or budgeted at $6,056. So based on that, I am assuming, and I know I shouldn't assume, but that expense actually happened early July. So we can, again, we don't have it yet, so
Okay. Yeah, I know.
it's the way it's recorded.
Okay, I'm just
But
trying
it's a
to
book, yeah. Most of our debt service.
trying to stay
though-
with you here.
Yeah, I know. So, but most of our debt service is in Fund 200.
Okay.
May I ask a question or make a statement, Madam Chair?
Yes.
All right. Not to distract, but it was just based on the conversation we had today, and this is kind of, we all have questions, and we know this is kind of a living document. And you had indicated that you would be willing to do another presentation the week before we adopt the final budget. So maybe everybody could think about if we can work it in our schedule to when you have more hard facts. We have the enrollment, we know how many more kids we've got. You have a better idea, maybe if everybody's agreeable
Wanna
to
do a
that.
workshop? You want us to do a
we could
workshop
do
before the
something the
final
week
so we can
before.
make sure we've got everything?
Well, really, what I wanted was to do a one-on-one
Okay.
with
Oh, okay.
each
Either
member,
way.
That would be fine.
so that I can go over where we are, where, again, the same type of presentation I had a week ago
Good.
with each of you.
And then the night that we adopt the final budget, you would give something like this for the community.
Yes.
Yep, I like that.
I think
Yep.
that's good.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. And again, this represents what I wanted to show here is that 83.87% represents our salaries and benefits for next year.
How could that have gone down so much when I just did the subtraction and we've decreased our salaries by maybe, I don't even know where it was here, 463,000. So,
Right.
well,
Well, and I believe
what was
the
last year's budget? Was it 324 million? Anybody remember?
last year it shows our final estimate, which was what, 175 and 41. So it did decrease from the prior year, and I believe those positions were part of the savings that we've had, the readjustment of employees that are starting. You've got not seasoned employees, but employees with less experience starting.
I was
So
just
those
questioning
kinds
the
of-
percentage. We were at 87 or
Right.
88, and now it says almost 84, 83, 84,
Yeah.
when really it's only $460,000.
Right.
I guess that's, yeah.
That's
Mm. Mhm.
yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, that ends the general fund budget. So we'll go into the debt service part of the budget. And all these numbers match with the ad as far as what we're presenting to the public tentatively right now. So, but again, the whole purpose of the meeting is to request the advertisement of the millage rates.
It's more than the four. Are you subtracting
Well,
the?
I was not looking at that slide. I was looking at the one she had in the front here that she had. That one there did show it like it was $1 million something.
Right.
So it was a different one that I was looking at. I was thinking, how do we get from 88% or 87% to
84.
84?
I think you were looking at the pie chart, right?
Might have
Is that
been.
where you saw it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. That's what I was taking the numbers from the pie chart.
Yeah,
Which
so,
weren't the same.
yep.
Yeah.
So it went from 87 to 84.
Mhm, mhm.
Well, I think that. Yeah. Well, no, because it does combine the salaries and benefits there too. So the numbers are different.
Mm-mm.
No. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
All right, so now we'll go into the debt service. Of course, the debt service represents our bond payments. For this chart represents what our bond payments or revenue will be for 200. It represents the COPS issues, it represents the SBE bonds, and it represents the racetrack bonds that we receive through various sources. Our debt for next year will be about $5.2 million. The next slide represents the individual debt. Basically, the SBE bonds. It shows what our remaining principal and payments will be for next year. And all that, of course, ties back to the total debt that we will be paying for next year. We've got the SBE bonds, we've got our racetrack bonds, our COPs, the 1, 2, 3 COP issues that we do have still outstanding. And again, this is just a summary version of our debt service. Currently, we have $74 million in debt that will be paid off over the terms of the agreement.
That's a lot better than the $100 million that we used to have.
It's going down.
We're gradually,
It's going down.
we can't live long enough to get it all paid off, but we're trying. At least we're going in the right direction there.
Yes. Okay, this is another summary page that pretty much talks about our the different debt that we have, $74 million, and just gives you an explanation about the bonds.
Right.
Can I interrupt you? Can you go back to the salary things on page 15 and 16? That's where the salaries and benefits, that's the two numbers that I looked at. And, you know, on page 18 you have just salaries, but it's not 1.5 million difference.
What slide?
I'm
What are
looking
you,
at
15 and 16, did you
Yeah,
say?
page 15 is the proposed 2015-16 general fund, and you have salaries and benefits as 218,168,000, and the prior year you have salaries and benefits as 217,704,000, and that is not the same as the numbers on the previous page, because the numbers on page 18, I should say, doesn't have benefits, it's just salaries. So I'm wondering, you know, when you just take that salaries and benefits and subtract one from the other, it's $463,000. It's not 1 point. So are these numbers accurate?
I think if you, on page 18, Ms. Kirkus, the 174, 332, 757, if you add the benefits below that,
Oh, okay. So that
there's
brings
the
us to those
43,
numbers.
835, 365. I think if you add those
That
two
should get the
together,
two.
that's what gets you to the number.
And the benefits have gone up.
Correct, because
Looks
of
like it,
the
yeah.
workers' comp percentage that we need to assess.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Okay, that ends our debt service. Now we're with the capital project funds, and this is basically the revenue source for our capital project funds. Part of the advertisement represents the list of projects that we will be funding through this fund source, the 1.5 mil levy, which is used for construction, remodeling, maintenance, renovations, repairs, lease purchase of school buses, new replacement of, and all of those items are allowed to be purchased using these funds. And then this represents a pictorial view of our beginning balance, fund balance, our appropriations, and then of course our ending fund balance. And then the next slide represents our revenues for capital, broken down by local and state. Okay. Part of this revenue includes the impact fees as well, and part of that revenue is used to pay for some of our bonds, our COPS issue. This slide represents how we are going to spend those dollars, and again, it represents those projects that are on that's in the ad.
So this is the one I had the question on, the building and fixed equipment. It goes from 1 million to 16 million.
There.
Right. The reason for that is the fact that we receive impact fees. The 1415 line represents our actual expenditures to date. As a result of that, since we've had some impact fees that we have not really spent because we have not built any new schools. So we roll that fund, the money, each year. So that 16 million includes the roll forward of the impact fees and other debt that capital dollars that we will receive.
So this isn't money that's supposed to be spent. It's money that we are
It's
Roll.
restricted to what it can be spent on, right?
Right. Part of it, like I said, we do receive about $5 million in impact fees, and part of that, the dollars go to our bonds that we pay part of our payments to, and the remaining sits in, it's there for fund balance, and not fund balance, but rolls into the next year. So we carry the balance each year.
That seems confusing the way it's put here. Because you've got the actual 1060 on the 213 and 1415 1063,
Right.
and then you've got tentative 16, which is including all of that you said is roll forward. It looks like to me if you're going to put the roll forward in it in 1516, you would have the roll forward also in it in the other years. So,
Right.
so it would match up. It
Right.
doesn't make
Like it was
sense.
just
But-
added.
It makes it look horrible.
Right, and I understand that, but basically what we're showing on the two columns are just the expense. So final estimate, if you were to look at last year's budget, that number would have been a high number.
Yeah.
Right now, it's actually representing what we spent this year.
So what exactly can we spend that on? Like when we do improvements to, roofs and air conditioning units, does that come out of that amount right there?
Part of this is the LCIF funds. There are two pots of money that's in
Percentage
there.
of that can be used.
So, Mr. Merrill, do you want to take that question?
Yeah, the impact fees can only be spent on permanent projects that are a result of growth. So we can spend it on a school, something that's going to be a permanent fixed asset. We can't spend it for renovation and repair of existing. It can only be spent on permanent projects, new buildings, new wings, new schools that are a result of growth, and that's about it. There's a lot of strings attached to impact fees.
When they were talking a while ago about strings attached,
Yeah.
well, this is the string attached. So the way I'm understanding it, right now we've been on a plateau, but they're saying that things are starting to pick up. Once they start picking up, and I think y'all had said last week, there's a possibility we might need a school where we had said 20 years in past months, but now it may be in the next 5-6 years. But from what you're saying, because this money has to be spent for things that are caused because of growth, we're going to have to sit there on this money until we grow.
Right.
But then the good thing is by the time we need a school, if the impact fee keeps up, maybe we won't have to have a COP to build a school.
Correct.
We'll have the, I believe
We
you
got-
said we'll just about have the money to build an elementary school by the time we think we're going to need one.
Right. We've got a little over $13 million
We just
sitting
don't
in the
need to
bank.
let anything happen to that money.
Correct.
Looks like
Right.
We got to
Exactly.
That's our money. Right?
Okay.
So we have, you said, a little over $13 million of impact fees that have not been spent.
Correct.
And
And we're collecting just under $6 million a year now. It was about $5 million. We got about 5.8, 5.9 million this year. I just picked up a check from the city of Green Cove Springs. So within 2 or 3 years, we spend some of it to pay off some of our COPs, but we're still putting a healthy amount in the bank, and hopefully we would have enough to build that elementary school debt-free.
Good. Okay.
Thank you for explaining that.
Okay. All right. That ends our capital
Yeah.
projects. The next one really is addressing the special revenue funds, which includes our food service, our special revenue, which is the contracted programs, the entitlement grants, our ERA funds that we received, and race to the top funds from the state. This represents the revenues that we are expected to receive. I'm sorry, this is food service. So basically, this is the revenue that we expect to receive from the lunch programs and, of course, the National Lunch School Program, the federal program. So we are expected to receive about $15,473,000. We're expecting to expend about $16 million, and it would leave a fund balance of about $2.4 million.
Is there any set amount that has to be left in that fund balance? Is there a percentage like our
The
general fund does?
The National Lunch Program requires that the food service program carries at least 3 months of operating expenditures.
Thank you.
Anything above that, it is looked at, and the auditors pretty much expect that we spend those dollars down. Okay. Next slide represents the local revenue, the amount of dollars that we will receive on the different types of lunch programs, the adult, the student lunch, a la carte, and then, of course, the state and the federal revenue that we receive as a result of participating in the National Lunch Program. This represents the expenditures that we are projecting for next year. It is, includes salaries, benefits, of course, purchase services. The food and supplies, of course, is high. It's the area where we purchase the food. So, and that ends our food service budget. The next budget is pretty much our contracted projects, which are, again, entitlement grants, and those grants are expected, typically we receive them during the year, so this budget will go up throughout the year. We do not keep a fund balance in this account as a result of the type of program it is. Once we are allocated the funds, we are only allowed to draw down what we've actually expended. And again, here is a breakdown of what those contracted programs are. And to address the question from last week, the Title II, Part A, I believe Ms. Condon had the question about the final estimated. The difference between the final and the proposed includes what we actually expended to date. So the difference is rolled into the next year's budget. The state allows us to roll forward, depending on the program, to roll forward a certain amount of dollars. So for instance, this particular program, I would say we maybe receive about $700,000 each year from this Title II Part A. Last year we spent about $594, so we were able to roll about $800. So we were able to roll about $200,000-300,000, which brings the total budget of the $1 million. Again, this is how we are going to spend those dollars in salaries, benefits, various purchase services, contracts, energy, materials, and supplies. Those are the expenditures. This project era, Race to the Top, basically it is a source of revenue that was provided to the district late last year, and the project closed June 30th, but we do have till August 20th to expend all of these dollars. So we rolled it into the new year, and it's expected to be all spent.
And have they earmarked for specific items?
This is the technology. There was the digital learning grant that was given to the district. I believe the state had additional revenue and provided that resource to Clay County.
Thank you.
This is basically just showing you that, the revenues from that project, the 405. Okay. 434, there's still the same. Again, it's another pictorial view of how those dollars are going to be spent. And you can see it's under capital outlay. The primary, most of those dollars are under the 600, 690 equipment, computers, those type of things. Okay. So the next one is the 7-Eleven fund. I just wanted to share with you that this is an internal service fund. It is part of our, it's a flow-through account, and you'll notice it's not on our budget page because it's really part of our general fund budget. So that fund is used to identify our excess property, our property and casualty coverage, our automobile liability, insurance, our workers' comp, crime, though all of those items that cover our insurance. The workers' comp, self-assured assessment, student catastrophe excess, all of those coverages that's maintained through this account. And again, I've shared this slide with you before. Nothing's changed. It's still at a deficit $1.2 million, and the expectation is working towards next year's budget is not only to ensure that we meet the 3% fund balance, but to adjust the fund to make sure that we're actuarially sound. What that means is, of course, is generating enough revenue and bringing in enough revenue to cover the deficit of $1.2 million, and of course ensuring that next year we've got the reserves to pay for the expenses that we will incur next year.
And how much are you putting in for that?
I believe it's the 1.2 and the 1.5. I believe.
Yeah, I thought it was 3.2 is what you mentioned last week. Total. Exactly. To get us back.
Right.
To get us back to where we needed to be at.
Right. Actuarially sound.
Yeah, actuarially sound.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it's 1.2 and 1.5, so it's a total of 2.7 you're adding to that.
Right.
2.7? Okay, it's not 3.2. Okay. Did you say?
No, she's right. It was 1.2 and
1.2 and 1.5?
Yeah.
So it's 2.7.
Right.
Okay.
Again, this is the charges for services, so the expectation is that we will incur that much of expenses, which is our property, the insurance, as well as all of our claims. This year we had about $500,000 worth of claims, slip and falls, those types of workers' comp claims that we pay for. Medical benefits, those types of things for those employees that hurt themselves on the job.
So that 3,677, that's the 2.7 we were just talking about, plus
other expenses.
Plus what we think.
Right.
Wow, that's a big hit.
Okay. So to close, again, the 15-16 tentative budget prioritized classrooms, creates a fiscal sustainability. The most highlights is really to work towards restoring a minimum fund balance of 3%, build a contingency fund to prepare for any types of unexpected expenditures such as proration, prior year adjustments, any kind of those activities. And to eliminate the self-insurance deficiency, and of course to improve our internal controls. So with that, I turn it over back to the board for next steps.
May I say something?
Yep.
This was a very good presentation. Thank you. You know, these are our priorities, and I understand it all. But, you know, we heard our bus drivers talk at our meeting last week, and we've got to somehow figure out a way to budget or figure out a way to supplement something, put something in our budget for our employees, for our support people, our teachers. And I know we're strapped and it's tight right now, but I think this has to be on our radar for the future, that we've got to do something where we're budgeting it so that every year when we come to collective bargaining, you know, there's something there. And I know it's hard to do because we can't do it with every year. We don't know what our enrollment's going to be. So we don't know what dollars we're going to get. And so you're the CPA, and you're smarter than us when it comes to these numbers. So I'm hoping that there's a way that it can end up in our budget. And, you know, we talked today about the McKay Scholarship money. I don't know if you went back and looked at that or not. But my understanding of when we looked at it was that we were showing it $2.5 million as a negative when we actually budgeted $2 million last year, so we should have only been showing $500,000 as a negative. And so, I mean, if we've got another extra $2 million, you know, I'd like to see us be able to put it in the budget for our teachers and our support people and somehow figure that out, because, you know, when we have support people standing before us, whether they're cafeteria workers, bus drivers, secretaries, you know, painters, whatever, we've got to take care of. What's making me really think of this is I heard the sheriff talk today, and he said his request to the Board of County Commission is a 9% increase because his staff have not had any increase since 2007. And over the next 2 years, he's asking for 9%. And hopefully they'll vote it on Tuesday, and it'll go in his favor. And he said the most important thing that he has to look out for are the human assets. And, you know, we are looking out for our children, and we're doing the best we can to educate them. But we've got to remember our employees. And we've got to figure out a way, and I don't know how, and I'm hoping that staff can figure out a way that we can somehow budget in money to go to our employees. And you know, if that means we've got to cut at the top end, or you know, through attrition, not fill positions. You know, we've looked at that before, and I know that the district has cut a lot already. I mean, you know, you just showed us how many employees we've lost. How many? I have a question, Mr. Van Zant, maybe you know, or maybe Mr. Rodsky. How many teachers do we have on the payroll at the end of June, and how many will we be bringing back? Like, just through attrition, does anybody know how many we've lost from the end of the 14-15 school year to the start of the 15-16 school year?
We've posted about 120 jobs.
Right. And then I know when the new school year starts, we usually bring back more in based on enrollment. But, you know, we're not ever talking about it. We're listening to these people come before us, and it's heartbreaking. And we've got to put this on our radar. We've got a responsibility, not just to our children that we're educating, but to our employees also. So, you know, we've got to look at where can we trim in other areas that we maybe can enrich, you know, our support people and our teachers somewhere or another. And if we do have an extra $2 million from that McKay Scholarship money, we need to do something good with it.
Madam Chairman, did you just say that there's $2 million there? And the McKay, wait a minute, I think we need to go back and look at that.
I was asking Ms. Legutko about it because in last week's papers, it showed the $2.5 million
I don't have
read
those with me.
In the parentheses as a negative. And I called and said, we budgeted $2 million, so really that should only be the $553,000. And I guess you probably went back and looked at it, so.
Is that right?
Right. That's correct. The paper that I shared last week, it had on the third, that page, it
remember the
showed the
McKay was
$3
on the
million.
bottom of the
It's
sheet.
actually the full amount budgeted for McKay scholarships because.
And we had
remember,
already budgeted $2 million.
Well, last year's budget included a $2 million set aside
Right.
for McKay.
Right.
Or part of that, again, was our set aside for reserves for
Right.
McKay, for charters, actually, I shouldn't say
Oh.
charters because we never budgeted for
Right.
charters.
That was just McKay.
Right, that was just McKay.
Right.
As a result, as we went through the school year, we used all of those dollars to not only true up the McKay scholarship, but also tried to pay for the charter schools and all of those expenses. On my report, and I believe when I do the one-on-one with you, closer to the final hearing, I will correct that statement where I said $3 million was set aside for McKay, which is true. It is $3 million, but what I represented was not the difference. It was just the full $3 million.
So it should have just been
It should have been $1 million.
$1 million.
Right.
So there's $2 million there,
Potentially.
but that would put our fund balance well up above 258 or 3 even.
Right.
I mean,
And
that
that's
would get us on up.
Right, and that is my intent, to try and go back and look at all of our expenditures, look at all of our projections of what we have in the budget,
When
and
you get some
again, the
definite-
plan to just prepare ourselves for our final budget.
But if we're already budgeting 2.5 million to get us to the 3%, which is where we have to be according to state,
Right.
requirements, and where we need to be, that still leaves that extra 2 million.
Right.
So I would like the board to just realize that that's there, and that,
Wow.
we've got people coming before us that are struggling. They're really, truly struggling. And I would like to think that everybody feels the same way. And, we've got to look out for our people. And we're not doing a good job of it right now. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. All right. So we went through item 1 and item 2, correct? We've reviewed the 15-16 tentative budget for all funds, and then reviewed the tentative 15-16 through the 2019 educational facilities plan.
There's nothing to add from the
Right.
other night unless y'all had any questions for Mr. Merrill.
Yeah.
Same document, no changes.
Okay.
Are you ready for the firing squad? No, I don't have any questions.
Okay. So there's nothing new to add.
Correct. There's nothing new. The state has not yet come out with PICO projections for the next 5 years, nor has it come out with the COFTI projections. So I could show you again, but it'd be exactly the same as I gave you
Okay.
last week.
I think we all have it.
And
I
none
don't have any questions.
none of
Does
this
anybody
is
have any
action
questions?
tonight, right?
The only thing that we have an action on is we have to approve
Oh,
the
advertise.
advertisement,
Okay.
which at this point, I'm going to turn it over to the superintendent.
Yeah, he needs to read number 3.
He's going to read,
I appreciate you guys' patience before I start reading anything. It's been about a month now since the legislature got out of special session. Typically, we have some good idea of all these numbers by about the first week of May, and this year it was the third week of June. And Susan Legutko, Miss Legutko, has done just a tremendous job parachuting in, integrating into a new team, coming into Clay County with all our rich history and business affairs department. Everybody's been there longer than her, so I'd just like to thank her again. Her and several of her team have been there day and night, weekends, trying to crank this out in a less sure time and a much abbreviated time on the calendar to do it with, so thank you. But as far as the tentative budget goes, I request approval from the board to advertise all appropriate notices and to set a public hearing on the 2015-2016 tentative budget for Tuesday, July 28th at 6 p.m. at the Teacher Training Center at Fleming Island High School, 2233 Village Square Parkway, Fleming Island, Florida. The meeting is being held for the purpose of consideration and approval by the board of the 2015-2016 proposed tentative budget and required millage rates. Following tentative millage rates are proposed for the July 1st, 2015 to June 30th, 2016. For required local effort, 4.889 mils. For discretionary operating purposes, 0.748 mils. For capital outlay projects, 1.500 mils, for a total proposed millage of 7.137 mils.
I will entertain a motion.
Let me ask you something, Madam Chairman. In years past, we've always taken a separate vote on these three things. Do
Yeah,
you
that's
still
gonna-
want a separate vote on
I
these?
believe that's going to be next week. Yeah, that's when we'll do that next week.
Okay, so you just want this in one swoop now?
Correct, right.
All right, I move that the board grant permission to advertise all the appropriate notices to include the following tentative millage rates for the fiscal year July 1, 2015 to June 30th, 2016. For local required effort, 4.889 mils. For discretionary operating purposes, 0.748 mils. For capital outlay projects, 1.500 mils. Total proposed millage, 7.137 mils. And to set a public hearing on the 2015-2016 tentative budget for Tuesday, July 28, 2015 at 6 p.m. at the Teacher Training Center at Fleming Island High School, 2233 Village Square Parkway, Fleming Island, Florida, 32003. That's
I have
my
a motion by Ms. Stutter. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
I got 2 seconds. Okay, I have a second from Ms. Gilhousen. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. Motion carries 5-0. Okay, and with that, we will move to presentations from the audience, which I don't believe we have any.
May I interrupt for a moment?
Sure.
Ms. Legutko, were you going to speak on this? Was this something that you said you would get to us about, or no? Is this nothing? No. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Superintendent requests.
I'll speak to this, and I'll be happy to give my nice color copy to anybody that would like one, any of the half dozen remaining attendees. That just highlights our classroom's first plan. We did take about $950,000, nearly $1 million out of the district office staff to try to support this year's budget. And this just simply depicts that. Clay County is number 2 out of every school district in Florida in prioritizing dollars to the classroom. And I hear Ms. Carricus loud and clear. And my first decade as a board member, I was able to enjoy a growing Clay County, increasing FTE, robust property appraisals from the property appraiser and the tax collector each year, and we grew and we built schools and we gave raises, and beginning teacher salary went from around $25,000 the year I taught to about $38,000 now, and it was great. And this year we've reduced teacher allocations significantly to the tune of over $4 million. We've reduced about $1 million out of the district office. Workers' comp went up the other by several million. So even though literally in salaries we reduced probably over $5 million just in those 2 line items, everything else we do to support our employees and the cost of benefits rose. So we don't even get to net that $5 million that was so painful to go through and get. We are where we are, but I'm thankful for Ms. Adams and Dr. Copeland and those that went before current senior staff and advised us and knew that we needed to make those tough calls in the spring so that we would not be drowning right now. I'd like to also invite you over the next 3 days, 8 to 4 every day at Oakleaf High School. We're having collaborative classroom training with several of our teachers. The National Teacher of the Year, a nice young lady from Alabama, I think I met her in D.C., didn't I? Is coming on Friday, and she'll be there from 9 to 11. Yes, she's from Alabama.
What town in Alabama? Maybe Tuscaloosa?
Was she from there?
I don't know. Is she?
Oh.
Well, Montgomery's okay. All right.
Is that where all the smart, pretty girls from Alabama come from?
Hey, you know, what can I say?
Okay, but she'll be there at 9 Friday morning, Miss Stutter, if you want.
I've got grandchildren this week, thank you.
Hey, they got a playground next door. Just whatever you need to do. Bright Minds Camp, we'll find something for them.
Got Grandma Camp.
And I'd like to invite you all to come to a State of the Schools / Back to School / Administrators Luncheon on August 6th. I think Ms. Bush has probably already sent something out. That's the last Thursday at noon at Middleburg High School. We're going to be able to fellowship, enjoy some food, and kind of re-energize ourselves and lay out a path forward for the 15-16 school year. So I hope you'll be able to join us for that. That's all. Thank you.
Okay. School board requests. I'd like to go first tonight, if that's okay. The only thing that I have is I wanted to just bring to your attention, I think that this is an email that all of us got. It was from, the email I got was from Miss Amy Lockhart from Seminole County School Board. I'm sure you guys all read it. It had to do with a solution that's being proposed to address all of the disruption of hours to the when the FSA testing this past year. So you guys all read it, and so I called her because I really kind of wanted to understand what her intent was by sending that to all of us. And in the past hour, she has sent an email to all board members throughout the state of Florida, so you guys can go read that. But what she's asking is that they had already sent this letter to the commissioner, and they're sort of asking school districts all across the state to sort of lock arms and come alongside them with this proposed solution. And so what I would ask is for us to take a look at it, maybe as a board decide if we want to draft a letter, something similar, and send it to the commissioner with our legislative delegation on copy. I've talked with Ms. Cornegay already, and she said I think this solution had been proposed once before or something like that, but she can speak more to it if she would like, or if you have questions. But I think that it's a great idea, and I would like for us to maybe at the August board meeting, or maybe even before then, decide whether or not we want to draft a letter and send it off. So that's just my thoughts. Okay. Ms. Condon? She doesn't have anything. Ms. Karakis?
I'd just like to tell Mr. Brodsky and Ms. Legutko they both did a fine job presenting to us today. And I know it's not easy to get up before us, and good job. We're proud of you. Thank you.
Okay.
I have
Ms.
nothing.
Studdard? Nothing? Okay. And we don't have any attorney requests, so this meeting is adjourned.